Hey guys, what is up? SuperKmanrocks here, back with another LCS offseason video. This one is actually going to be entirely based around 2020 Scouting Grounds. And I really wanted to make this video because I don't see a ton of Scouting Grounds content on YouTube right now. It's an area that I'm really passionate about. I love watching Amateur. I love watching Academy. And so it's something that I feel like is a pretty good market for me to jump into and talk about. I'm making a lot more LCS content this year. And I guess LEC and League of Legends and LPL, LCK, I'm planning on making content for them as well once the season starts. But for now, I'm loving making LCS offseason videos. You guys seem to really enjoy that first one I put out yesterday or 2 days ago now, or whatever I put it out. But I wanted to go ahead and talk about Scouting Grounds this year. Scouting Grounds was actually really fun. I think this year's event was such a massive upgrade to last year's event. The talent pool this year was significantly better, and I don't mean to say that in a real negative way till last year, but last year it seemed like there were 2 or 3 really solid prospects that went in the first part of the draft, and then everybody else was just kind of meh. But this year, all 20 players invited seem to really deserve it and seem to really be, academy considerations, which I think is a big plus for the event. It's, harkens back to 2017 when we had that ridiculous class. But I kind of wanted to give my thoughts on first how the teams played out, what I think went well in the Drake draft, and then I'll go ahead and talk about the post Scouting Grounds draft as well and give my thoughts on the players and potentially their fits with the organizations that drafted them. So if you guys are interested in more content like this, please go ahead and like. If you want to see more, if you're interested in, LCS content, Academy content, Amateur content, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. I'm going to be making more content like this pretty consistently throughout not only the rest of the offseason, but the rest of 2021. So if you guys are interested in that, please go ahead and show your support down there. But without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into the first team I want to talk about, which is Mountain. Mountain was a little bit interesting. I think most of us had them pegged as the worst team going into the event. They actually showed up a little bit better. I believe they actually took series off Ocean. I believe they took a series off of Ocean in the best of threes. But of course, this team was coached by 100 Thieves, Dignitas, and FlyQuest. 100 Thieves obviously notorious for knowing or being able to scout amateur talent with their 100 Next program, which you'll be hearing me talk about a lot. I think this team ended up being a little bit weaker, if not only for the fact that 100 Thieves, I feel like, just didn't want to draft any of their 100 Next players because they already had a decent idea and a grasp on how good those players were. And so we ended up seeing a team here that maybe didn't have the best talent at the event. I don't think it necessarily had the worst either. I just think it didn't end up working out. The top laner and Gibble, we'll get to individual performances in a little bit, but Gibble didn't perform super well, and unfortunately, they just had an underperformance from their jungler, Zaun, or Iconic, who I think a lot of people had pegged as a pretty good jungler going into this event, but he just didn't show up. It's worth talking about APA's unfortunate struggles this event. I'm not going to speculate onto what was going on with his internet or what was, potentially going on behind the scenes. All I know is that it could not have been easy for him to play through all these distractions that were happening to him at this event. And so, personally, I think it's really difficult, especially how young he is. I see it very difficult to evaluate his performance this weekend. If you had a high grade on him before Scouting Grounds, I think you probably didn't see enough to completely rethink that. The only game that I think was really unfortunate to watch was APA versus, I believe, Yunbi. In that Rise, he got his Aurelion Soul in that matchup, and he had to go up against Yunbi's Rise, who just absolutely demolished him. He played really well. So that would be the only thing that I would be worried about. Again, I won't talk about him too much now because I'll get into some of the players that weren't picked a little bit later. But this team just didn't come together. I thought the bot lane was fine. Spawn had to kind of hard carry a lot of the late game. But I think it was just an underperformance, and I'm not really sure where to chalk that up, but to me, it definitely kind of happened. But moving into the second team is going to be Team Cloud Drake. They finished third. They did take the third place matchup off of Mountain Drake. Now, Cloud was, for me, the underperformers of the event. Mountain obviously finished below them, but I actually had Cloud pegged to be one of the best, if not the best team at the tournament. And for them to not even make the finals match, I thought was very, very suspect. In retrospect, I think it kind of makes a lot of sense. A lot of the players on that team don't necessarily complement each other super well. I'm not sure the draft philosophy there. You get arguably the best player going into the event, or what people saw as the best player in a lot of analysts' minds, in Niles in the top lane, this really hard carry top laner, and you surround him with players who aren't necessarily conducive to helping that style look really good. Rosethorn had a really tough tournament. He had some really good games on the final day in that third place match. I think he had probably his best 2 games of the entire tournament on those final days. It's a good sign to show that he can improve, but he didn't look too great throughout the tournament. And then the bot lane, it's hard to say. AD carry was definitely the most stacked role at the tournament. And unfortunately, because of that, I think Andy Bendy just kind of got a little bit overlooked because the 3 other AD carries were all really, really good. I don't think Andy was bad, but I think that bot lane of him and Otto weren't necessarily terrific. It didn't necessarily jump out at people, and I think a lot of that, kind of just falls back on the synergy with the team. I just think a lot of this, for some reason or another, didn't come together. And whatever that reason ended up being, unfortunately, it's kind of bad for them. So we'll go ahead and talk about Infernal now. Infernal looked like the best team at the tournament every single day except for finals day, which it's unfortunate for them, but I do think they showed a ton of good things. There was a ton of players on this team that I think a lot of people were already pretty sold on before the tournament, most notably Copy in the mid lane, and then the bot lane of Shoryu and Shady. But even with that, I think Shady especially, I think you could absolutely have made the argument that he was the MVP of the entire tournament. He was incredibly good. Shoryu is obviously probably the best bot laner at the tournament, at least the most proven bot laner at the tournament, and Copy played out of his mind. He was that, supportive mid laner that every organization seems to be looking for right now. So it was definitely a big showing. I think the big surprises were definitely the top 2 members of the team, Tony Top in the top lane, and then Tomio in the jungle. Tony Top, I think a lot of people knew how well he could carry, how good of a laner he was, how well he could get his own advantages. But I think a lot of people were surprised by kind of how well he played in those late game team fights. Now, he wasn't always perfect. He got some pretty ridiculous leads in the final day against Rodov in the top lane, but wasn't able to convert those into finishes. So, it is what it is there. He definitely still has room to grow, but I can definitely see why a lot of people had him pegged a lot higher than I did going into the tournament. And then the big tournament surprise has to be Tomio, the solo queue star. He has yet to play for an amateur team, and he comes into Scouting Grounds and looks like one of the best junglers at the tournament. It's a big showing for him, and if this is what we're going to be getting out of Tomio, then I'm definitely not surprised that he got drafted, spoiler alert, as early as he did. But we can go ahead and talk about the tournament winners, which was Team Ocean Drake. Ocean Drake, of course, being Rodov, NXI, Yunbi, Yeon, and Joey. Sorry, I'm looking at the pool, and I had to try to remember off the top of my head where they all went. But yeah, this team looked really, really good on the final day. I think there's a ton of talent on this team. This is actually the team I personally predicted to win the tournament. I thought it would be them and Cloud. Infernal really overdid my expectations, but I thought it would be Ocean and Cloud towards the back half of the tournament, just purely because I think NXI is such a monster. And he did nothing but prove that, as I believe he won the Scouting Grounds MVP for the entire tournament. He looked incredible in the jungle. Rodov was kind of, I don't want to say the weak link in the top lane, but he played weak side, and he actually did it pretty well. He got down in a few matchups laning phase-wise, but he never let that kind of transition into his late game. He always seemed to be useful late game, finding flanks, finding engages, things like that. So you have to give him props for that. And then the bottom 3, I think, were super duper good. Yunbi, of course, I think people could argue is the best mid laner right now at the tournament. I'm not sure, if you're going to make that argument for potential, but he's probably the best mid laner right now at the tournament. I think Yeon is an incredibly underrated AD carry. I think Shoryu and Spawn were getting a ton of attention at this tournament, and I think Yeon was actually the one that probably jumped out the most to me, just raising their stock through their play. And then Joey's good. We know what Joey is. I'm not a massive Joey fan, but he did his job well. He got caught out sometimes, but he also, made those risky engages and made those clutch plays when he had to do it. So let's talk about the draft. Let's talk about where all of these players went in the draft. I'm going to go from 1 to 10, and then I might talk about a few of the not picked players, just kind of throw my thoughts in there on some of them. But let's talk about the first overall pick in the draft, which was Immortals pick, who went ahead and selected Tony Top, who was the top laner for Infernal. Of course, he played for Mirage in the amateur scene, or at least I believe. A lot of that's off the top of my head. If there might be a team that they played with more recently than the one I mentioned here, but a lot of what I'm doing is just remembering amateur from 2020. So Tony probably raised his stock the most of any player, maybe other than Tomio. Tony looked incredible. He was able to consistently generate leads in the top lane. I think that fits really well here into the Immortals system. Immortals, obviously kind of needs a little bit of everything. I think there's a ton of depth in talent at this event, and I definitely don't see a problem with selecting Tony. I was a little bit surprised. Obviously, a lot of people had Niles as the best top laner going into the tournament. And yeah, he struggled a little bit, but I don't know if he struggled enough for me to completely rethink that he was better than Tony Top. However, with the infrastructure that they do have there at Immortals, obviously Tony coming from China, originally being from China, I believe they have a lot of, or at least a few Chinese-speaking assistant coaches and academy coaches there at Immortals. They could really see his unbelievably dominant laning and his potential as a big selling point. We can develop that, and I can definitely agree with that. I think if you see his weaknesses as transitioning leads into late game, that is definitely something that I believe could be fixed. Of course, Immortals was part of the coaching staff for Team Infernal Drake. So they could have just been working with him all week and seen something that they really, really liked out of him. And I definitely wouldn't blame him for that. You'll notice a lot of the players that were selected were from the teams that coached them in the scouting grounds. So, I can't complain too much about the Tony pick first overall. It was surprising, but not too surprising. The second pick was CLG, and CLG did go ahead and select Yeon, the AD carry from Ocean, by way of 100 next. And, a lot of people were kind of surprised by this, that this wasn't Shoryu, that this wasn't Spawn. But I personally think Yeon is fantastic. Like I said in the Ocean Roundup, I think Yeon actually raised his stock probably more than any other AD carry at the event. I thought he looked incredible. To me, he was the second best AD carry at this event, behind Shoryu. But Shoryu obviously being much more experienced than Yeon. I think you could see the thought process of a team like CLG maybe wanting to go for the less experienced, the more rookie prospect in Yeon here. I actually think he fits really well in the CLG. It depends on what they want to do in the bot lane. Obviously, if Deathly is their starter, they already do have Wind there. I didn't think Wind was bad. I thought Wind was actually pretty good in Academy last split. But if you're seeing Yeon as potentially an upgrade to Wind, I understand that as well. Of course, they did go ahead and coach him on Team Ocean Drake. It was them and Team Liquid on Team Ocean Drake. So potentially they just really enjoyed his work ethic. I've heard nothing but good things about his shot calling and his macro from Papa Smithy and a few other sources who have been very vocal about how good he is vocally. And so I definitely see him as a worthwhile second pick here. The third pick in the draft was Dignitas's to select, and they selected Copy, the mid laner for Infernal, by way of 100 next as well. And Copy is someone that I've been praising on Twitter. If you follow me on Twitter, twitter.com/SuperKmanrocks. If you've been following me on Twitter, I've been praising Copy all week. He's not going to get a lot of love, maybe from the flashy plays. He's not going to have a lot of those sick outplays or anything like that. But he is going to add wins to your team. He is the kind of mid laner that is, if you pair him with a really aggressive jungler or even with an aggressive top laner, he's the type that's going to shove the lane and he's going to roam. And I think that is a very valuable role in today's League of Legends, especially. So he really, really showed out at this tournament. He looked really good on the Syndra. He looked really good on the Twisted Fate. Champs that you would expect him to be good on. And talking about the fit with Dignitas has, I believe, two mid laners under contract right now in both Phoenix and Froggen, but essentially no youth there. Obviously, both of them have been playing for years. And if you're looking at youth, in the mid lane especially, I don't think there is a better choice than Copy at this tournament. The fourth pick originally belonged to 100 Thieves, but that pick was sold to Golden Guardians. Not sure the details of that. Probably just a little bit of money, but Golden Guardians did take over that 4th pick, and they selected Niles, the top laner for Team Cloud, by way of Maryville University. Now, Niles was a lot of people's top prospect, or at least somewhere within the top 3 going into this tournament. He didn't exactly show out. Now, like I was talking, that could have been due to team comp. It could have been due to Niles just trying to overforce things, but for whatever reason, Niles didn't have the best tournament of his life. I can't put that on him. I can't, just sit there and go, okay, well, now I'm going to look at Gibble and Rodov or whatever above him. I think if you had a high grade on Niles, it's really hard to change your mind on that. He dominated Collegiate and Academy on Maryville. He just looked like a man amongst boys. He is definitely ready for Academy. And Golden Guardians, if the rumors are to be believed, they have pretty much no roster spot filled right now in either LCS or Academy. And if that's the case, then adding someone like Niles to be kind of the foundation for your Academy team seems like an incredibly smart pick. Golden Guardians was actually the coach of the Infernal Drake team, so them selecting from Cloud Drake isn't someone they coached, but I imagine it's someone that they had a very, very high grade on before the tournament. And I could see him becoming a potential Academy star and then later a pretty solid LCS top laner. The 5th pick did belong to EG, Evil Geniuses. And they actually went with probably the first big surprise, other than, I guess, Tony, if you consider Tony a surprise at 1. The first big surprise, which was Tomio in the jungle for Infernal. He actually, I don't believe he's played for an amateur team. If he has, it's not one in any of the major circuits. But Tomio was, essentially, I think a lot of people had him pegged as the worst jungler going into this tournament. And now I think people are definitely having him in that conversation for top 1, 2 coming out of it. He looked so good on that team Infernal. He was able to consistently generate leads, consistently help out lanes like Tony Top and Shoryu. There are a few things that I think may have boosted his performance. I believe having Copy as your mid laner is going to be a big benefit, because Copy is a player who loves to roam with the jungler. We saw a lot of 3-man dives top lane with Tony Top, and I think that definitely helped. I also think I'm a little bit worried about champion pool. I'm not going to sit here and be super duper worried about champion pool, but I believe like a ton of games he played that, I don't have the stats in front of me. I probably should, but a ton of, I would say at least 70% of the games he played at this tournament were on Lilia. He seemed to really, really favor that champion. And you just have to wonder, if Lilia or champions similar to Lilia, obviously Graves, Nidalee, whatever, I'm sure he can play it all, fall out of meta, what is he going to look like? Because he didn't show a ton of versatility, but he did show that he was terrific on the champions that he was picked to play, and that's really all you can ask of him. He showed that he was comfortable and confident to be able to play against some of the best the amateur has to offer, and I definitely could see him fitting in really well. If EG is looking to sell Anda might have some LCS calls coming up. He, in my opinion, in my grades, he was the best Academy jungler last split. If Anda is getting those calls, and if Anda is looking to be on an LCS team in the starting split, I think bringing Tomio in here makes a lot of sense. It also would make a lot of sense if EG was looking to invest in an amateur team. Obviously, he would slot down an amateur, I think, a little bit more comfortably than he would in Academy. The only thing you would worry about with that is obviously you can only sign players to your amateur team for a maximum of 1 year, so they would have what is essentially no control over him if they did slot him down into amateur. They could go ahead and pull the 100 next route, which is when they pulled Tenacity and Kenvi up in about, I think, August or July onto the Academy roster in order to gain protection on them for the offseason. But, that's a whole circumstance in itself. That means you're either releasing a player or you're, just having someone sit on the bench and not play, and then you have to pay an extra player in Academy, and it's a whole ordeal. So it'll be interesting to see if EG even signs Tomio or what they do with Tomio, but good for him for getting selected in top 5 of the draft. The 6th pick was Golden Guardians' original pick. They still have it here. They had 2 selections in the draft. And along with Niles, they went ahead and selected Yunbi, the mid laner for Team Ocean, by way of, I believe, XT Esports. That's the last one I remember him on. He might have been on a different team, but I remember him last on XT. Yunbi was super good this tournament. I think he kind of went under the radar just because I think a lot of players were a little more flashy than him. But I thought Yunbi did a really, really good job. He did pretty much everything he was asked. He showed off a really good champion pool as well. I think that's going to be something that's definitely in his favor for this tournament is his champion pool depth. The big concern, obviously, with Yunbi is the age. I believe he's 25 years old, which has got to be... If he entered LCS right now, he'd be on the upper echelon of age in the LCS. So not exactly the youngest player in the world. But if you're Golden Guardians and you're looking for a player that... obviously age, it's a lot different than traditional sports. Age doesn't necessarily correlate to on the downswing or on the upswing like it would in traditional sports, purely because your body doesn't give out like it does in traditional sports. Obviously, I've heard the argument that your reflexes or whatever get worse, but I think that is entirely subjective and personal based. I don't think you could say that, for most people by the age of 28, they're not going to be able to play competitive League of Legends anymore. I just think that is not true, personally. And so I'm not too worried about the age. I think Yunbi showed off a ton of good stuff. I think he fits in the Golden Guardians, again, really well here. A team that's just looking to find as much young talent as possible, or as much talent as possible in general, if they are, reportedly selling pretty much everybody on their roster. So Yunbi slotting in here, I think, makes a lot of sense. The 7th pick belonged to Cloud9. Now, Cloud9 made the selection of Shady, the support from Team Infernal and from Maryville University. Now, Shady, like I was talking about in the Team Infernal rundown, I think maybe had the best tournament of anybody. I think you could argue that he was the MVP, that he definitely showed the most. I believe he played 8 or 9 unique picks, and he looked incredible on all of them. Even on the final day, his Pyke pick pretty much carried Team Infernal to a win in Game 2. He looked incredible this tournament. I believe he was probably, for me, the best player at the event. But he falls down here, obviously. He's a little bit more of a veteran presence. He's played in LCS before for Phoenix 1. He's played on TSM Academy. He might have played on another Academy team. I just remember him on TSM Academy. But he does fall for that reason. I love the pickup here, though, by Cloud9. Cloud9, if some rumors are to be believed, they're shopping a lot of their Academy talent, and that could include Diamond. Diamond has been in that Academy system for a while. He's been one of the best, if not the best, Academy support for a while. And so I could definitely see LCS teams being really interested in picking him up, especially if he's not that expensive. And I think if you brought Shady in, it'd be pretty seamless. It'd be a pretty seamless transition to go from someone like Diamond to someone like Shady. I think they offer kind of similar things. Shady may be a little bit more aggressive than Diamond, but overall, just as good of a player, I think. And I think that would, if you're looking to continue Cloud9 Academy's pretty ridiculous success, I think slotting Shady into that position really makes a lot of sense. The 8th pick belonged to Team Liquid, and they selected Spawn, the AD carry from Team Mountain, by way of Polar Ace. And Spawn was definitely the best-looking member of Team Mountain. Mountain didn't look super good throughout the tournament, but I think Spawn showed off a ton of things. His position was just so stacked at the tournament. AD carry, I think all 4 members of that position at the tournament looked really, really, really good. Spawn kind of suffering from that. I think it was kind of hard to show off in the bot lane, but I do think Spawn was able to show some stuff in the bot lane, was able to show off why he was considered one of the more exciting and promising young prospects at the tournament. I actually think he slots in the TL Academy really, really well. I'm trying to remember who was there last split. I can't. It's up on the screen right now. Boop, there he is. But Spawn will fit in. Obviously, if I can't even remember, then Spawn will fit in quite well. Oh, was it Rikara? It might have been Rikara. Spawn will fit in quite well. I think he's an upgrade to pretty much anyone that they had. He just shows a ton of promise. I'm a little bit lower on Spawn. Actually, I think I'm pretty neutral on Spawn. I think I'm just higher on Yeon than a lot of people. But I thought Spawn was good. He has good mechanics. He shows good lane ability. I think that's the big thing with Spawn is his laning is really, really solid. I don't know if he's necessarily the late game team fighter that Yeon is, or at least that's what I saw at this tournament. But I think that's definitely something that you can teach. I think FBI is a great example of that. When FBI came over to NA, he wasn't a great team fighter at all. But he's definitely gotten a ton better at that. And I think hopefully, TL's coaching staff is really, really good. Spawn can definitely do some good things. The fun thing to talk about here is obviously now there are 2 TL Spawns, with Spawn from the OPL being signed as the Academy coach yesterday, I believe, and then that same day, them going to draft Spawn in the Scouting Grounds draft is quite funny. So I could definitely see him fitting in here, but, what are they going to do about the names? The 9th pick in the draft was FlyQuest's, and they selected NXI, the jungler from Team Ocean, by way of 100 Next. Now, one thing I haven't talked about a ton up until this point, at least with the draft, was some of these players reportedly, obviously I don't have any inside information on this, I'm not leaking anything here, I don't believe, but some of these players reportedly had deals in place with teams even before the Scouting Grounds event took place. And if that's true, I could see them being either, they could fall down in the draft or they could just be overlooked entirely. NXI, I believe, has to be one of those cases. I don't see a situation in which he falls to number 9 if he doesn't already have some sort of agreement in place with another organization. And that organization could be FlyQuest. I'm going to talk about his fit with FlyQuest here. NXI was the MVP of the tournament, as announced by Riot. And so, you have to imagine that he caught some people's eyes. He was tremendous over the week. He wasn't quite as dominant in the finals. I think that may have lowered his stock quite a bit, or not quite a bit, but just a tad. Not that he was bad, but just not as dominant. Over the week, I was making jokes on Twitter that I don't think there was a single early game that NXI wasn't up 1,500 or 2K gold at like 15 minutes. The guy just dominated early game, pretty much every game on Graves and on Nidalee, etc., those kinds of picks. Obviously, coming out of the 100 Thieves Jungle Factory, I think he's got quite a bit of lineage to say that is a good thing. The coaching there seems to know what they're doing. What a shocker. But, yeah, I think his fit here on FlyQuest is actually really good. If Santorin is leaving FlyQuest, which actually, as of right now, I think Jacob Wolf tweeted about an hour ago that Santorin is signing with Team Liquid. So Santorin leaving FlyQuest, I could see Fnatic taking over that starting job on FlyQuest normal roster. And I could see NXI slotting in really, really nicely here in Academy. I think that would be a fantastic situation for him. Probably one of the best in the entire LCS right now, just because it's such a clear path to LCS if he does overperform in Academy. And I think, NXI is someone we could definitely be talking about in a year or two as one of those breakout stars in LCS. Finally, the last pick of the draft was TSM, the Summer Champions, and they selected Shoryu, the AD carry from Team Infernal, by way of a new esports. And Shoryu was, I think, my top AD carry going into the tournament. I think a lot of people would agree with that. It's kind of a travesty that this guy hasn't been on an academy team, that he's kind of been an amateur. I think he is just way too good for amateur. I would say I'm shocked that he's fallen this far, but again, we don't know about deals that they may have had going into the tournament. Shoryu is one of those names I would definitely expect to have gotten some interest even before Scouting Grounds started. So we don't know if he had already made a deal with TSM or if he had a deal with somebody else, what the situation there is. But TSM does select him here with the 10th pick. This signals to me that TSM is actually looking to either sell or promote Lost from their academy team. Lost is just too good. Shoryu is fantastic. I think Shoryu is a really good player, but Shoryu is not Lost. And so this would signal to me that Lost is not going to be TSM Academy's starting bot laner next year, and that Shoryu would be. And if that's the case, hopefully it's Lost in LCS. I could definitely see him being on TSM. I could definitely see him being sold for quite a bit of money. I definitely think there would be a market there for him. But Shoryu coming in, I think, fits in really well. He is going to be one of the better or middle. I think he's definitely ready for Academy. A lot of Academy, I think, is maybe questionably ready for Academy, at least this past year. But I think Shoryu is one of those players that is definitely ready and would slot in pretty much immediately right now as, a solid player that, with some development, of course, could become an LCS AD carry in due time. All right, well, that's my analysis for the Scouting Grounds teams and then the Scouting Grounds draft. There are just a few players I want to touch on that I think may have not gotten the looks that they either thought they would get or maybe just got overlooked because their team didn't do quite well at the Scouting Grounds tournament, which is a little unfortunate, but it is what it is. I want to start first with Zaun, formerly Iconic. A lot of you may remember him. He plays for Maryville. He was the jungler for Team Mountain. I think Zaun was actually pretty hyped going into this tournament. Unfortunately, he heavily underperformed, really, really, really underperformed. And I think it definitely hurt his case. I could still see him finding an academy spot somewhere this upcoming season, but unfortunately, he wasn't drafted here. I think Captain Shrimps kind of falls into that category as well. APA, I'll have all these guys up on the screen. Captain Shrimps and APA, both the mid laners. Mid lane was a position I was calling the deepest in the tournament. That turned out to not be true. It turned out to be AD carry, but mid laners, I think, just kind of, it was really difficult for them to look good this tournament just because of how the meta ended up working out, where it was so jungle focused. Mid laners kind of had to take a back seat in terms of flashiness, in terms of showing off, in order to give the junglers some time. But I think these are players that I could definitely see. Captain Shrimps, I believe, is 24. APA is incredibly young, but Captain Shrimps especially, I think, is someone that I think some academy teams are going to be looking at. Andy Bendy, I talked about a little bit. I don't want to go too much into him. And then finally, I think the last one I want to talk about is Otto. Otto was actually my top support going into the tournament here. I had him over Shady. And unfortunately, Cloud just kind of felt like Cloud just kind of imploded. But Otto, I think, is a super good player. He is incredibly smart macro-wise. He's a really good shot caller. He knows pretty much what to do at all points in time. He wasn't able to show off mechanically at this tournament. I don't think he's a bad mechanical player. Obviously, he's just recently role swapped from AD carry down to support. So I think this is a guy I would definitely be looking at to pick up for an academy team. I think support especially is one of those positions in academy that just really isn't that strong right now, in my opinion. And I think Otto is better than a lot of the supports that currently occupy positions. So I would definitely be interested in him. But that's going to be it. That's my Scouting Grounds video. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, go ahead, like, comment, subscribe, do all the YouTube stuff. It really, really helps me out. Not only, obviously, getting this video out to as many people as possible, but it actually lets me know if you're interested in more amateur or academy content. Obviously, my LCS video went up 2 days ago. If you haven't checked that out, that's going to be in the iCard up on the top of the screen. And go ahead and check that out if you're interested in some of the LCS offseason rumors, my thoughts on them, just kind of going over it. It's a little bit long of a video, but I guess this one is too. But other than that, guys, if you enjoyed, again, like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you all later.